Hello and welcome along to this latest episode in my teaching series, The Jesus That John Knew. We left last time beginning to think about a very famous story in John's Gospel, which is known as the cleansing of the temple. Now it's well worth pointing something out here, because Moses would be going to the Pharaoh, and his assignment would be to go to the Pharaoh and say, "Let my people go, in order that they may serve me and come out into the wilderness and worship me." But now Jesus, in his ministry, who will be perceived and have to have the credentials of the new Moses, he's going to go into the temple, and into the temple he's going to say, "Let your religion go, in order that you may serve me." And come out into the wilderness, as the book of Hebrews will tell us, where we have a tent and we have an altar, at which those who serve at the altar here in the temple, they have no right to eat. And I can promise you this, it would have been a much easier assignment to ask Pharaoh to let the people go in order that they can worship God, than it would be to ask the legalist to let their religion go in order that they could worship God. Because where we once had the bondage to slavery in Egypt, now we have a bondage in slavery to religion. Where once they were making bricks without straw, now, well, whatever they make is going to cost them an awful lot more than just bricks without straw. But that we'll come to in a moment. It may seem strange to you to begin a talk about John chapter 2 and the cleansing of the temple by thinking about a verse or a set of verses in the book of Malachi. Because typically when people refer to Malachi chapter 3, we all kind of hold on to the edge of our seats because we know what's coming next. We know we're going to hear something horrendous from Malachi chapter 3 verse 10 about bringing in the full tithe and all the rest of it. But it's interesting that the very same people that bludgeon the church to death on Malachi chapter 3 verse 10 seem to somehow have missed what it says in Malachi chapter 3 and verse 1. Let me read it to you, because it may not be a familiar text to you either. "See," it says, "I will send my messenger, who will prepare the way before me. Then suddenly the Lord you are seeking will come into his temple." Now hear this. "Then suddenly the Lord that you are seeking will come into the temple." Now watch. "The messenger of the covenant whom you desire will come, says the Lord Almighty. But who can endure the day of his coming? Who can stand when he appears? For he will be like a refiner's fire or a launderer's soap. He will sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver, and he will purify the Levites and refine them like gold and silver. Then the Lord will have men who bring offerings in righteousness, and the offerings of Judah and Jerusalem will be acceptable to the Lord, as in days gone by, as in the former years. So I will come near you for judgment. I will quickly testify against sorcerers, adulterers, and perjurers, and those who defraud the labourers of their wages, who oppress the widows and the fatherless, and deprive the aliens of justice. But do not fear me, says the Lord Almighty." What a mighty, mighty text. Oh, he says, there will be those days when the Lord will have men that bring offerings in righteousness, and offerings of Judah and of Jerusalem will be acceptable to the Lord, as in the days gone by. What a glorious history of the temple and the tabernacle Israel has. And if you're going to be with us in our teaching series in Atlanta in the coming week, when we're going to be talking about this whole marvelous teaching from the book of Hebrews, this Radically Better series, this is something I'm going to really hone in on, the whole mystery and the oneness that is involved in the temple and the tabernacle. But here we have something that has been defrauded, something that has been twisted, and I want to get to that. So let's turn to John 2 verse 13. So here's Jesus now saying, "Well, it was the Passover of the Jews, and it was at hand. And Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And in the temple he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons, and the money changers sitting there. And making a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with their sheep and their oxen. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, "Take these things away and do not make my father's house a house of trade." Do you hear that? Malachi chapter 3 and verse 1. "So I will come near to you for judgment. I'll be quick to testify against the sorcerers, the adulterers, and the perjurers," against those who defraud labourers of their wages, and who oppress the widows and the fatherless, and deprive aliens of justice. You see, many of us perhaps think that when we're hearing those texts from Malachi, we're hearing about Jesus talking to those who are the strangers, those who are foreigners to the covenant. But in actual fact, that text belongs right here to the church of its day, and saying, you people are defrauding the people. What is going on? And the Lord of the covenant has come in. The God you're seeking has come in, and you haven't even noticed him. You see, the picture here is so powerful, because when the people who have gathered in Jerusalem for this great celebration, they've come and they've brought with them, as you heard last time, their offerings, their pigeon sacrifices, their animal sacrifices, and they want to offer them up to the Lord as their Passover sacrifice. But the problem is that two things they're going to have to confront. In order to get into the temple, once they've got through the crowd with their little offering, they then have to face the animal inspectors, and the animal inspectors invariably looked at the offering that they brought, the pigeons they brought, and declared them to be unclean, and they weren't worthy to be able to be brought into the temple, and so they had to get rid of the one that they brought, and they had to buy the one that was being sold by the animal inspectors themselves. So it was only in the interest of the animal inspectors for them to sell that which they were going to make a profit for, and what a profit they were going to make of it. Goodness me, if you've ever been to the theatre in London, you'll know exactly the kind of way this system works. Go to a London theatre and buy a packet of sweets, and you're going to wonder to yourself, how come I'm paying £5 for a packet of sweets that I can pay 50p for in the shop? Well, because it's a closed environment. Once you're in there, you're locked in, you can't get out. The only thing you can buy if you want anything is from the concessions that are in the theatre. Well, it's the same thing. Once you were locked in the temple, the church, the only thing you could do was buy that which was in the temple. That's how it worked. And of course, now you go to get your money out of your pocket. You've already paid the 1 penny that was your wages to buy this little pigeon to bring to the sacrifice to your God. You bring your coins out of your pocket, and they look at the coins and say, well, what's that? Oh, here's my money. Well, that money's no good. You've got to use temple money. So you have to go across to my friend in the booth over there. So you cross over to the guy who's in the booth, and you give him your money, and you say, please, could you change this for temple money? And the man says, yeah, sure I could, for a 200% tax. So he now charges you 200% on your little thing. So you've got you're giving him, for every £1 you give, for every £1 you want, you've got to give him £3, and he gives you back your little £1. You go back across the other guy and buy your thing, and before you know where you are, you're bankrupt even before you walk into the place, because the whole point of the system is to say, look, you've got to understand, you're not valid, your offering's not valid, your money's not valid, your currency doesn't work here, nothing works there, because this is an insider system, and the only way you're going to have to make this thing work is if you do the thing the way we want it done. Well, Jesus is done with that, and as you will see, and we'll finish this up next time, he comes into the temple and he turns the tables on that and says, this is coming to an end, and it's coming to an end now. Until next time.